Not saying Chamisha. For the first few years, the Rebbe himself, he called it Hey Teves. Tavshin Mem Ches, Tavshin Mem Tes, Tavshin Nun, the Rebbe called it Hey Teves. In 1992, Tavshin Nun Beis, the Rebbe, without saying it, renamed it. He kept on calling it Chamisha B'Teves. So, if there had not been a stroke, the following years would have continued the same inyan. But because of that, it's not so widely known. But the name of the Moyed, the correct name of this Yom Tov is Chamishi B'Teves, not Hey Teves. And I'll try very hard to be a good boy. You don't know how hard I have to try to be a good boy today, but I'll try very hard to be a good boy. On the outside, you look at Chamisha B'Teves on the outside. It seems like a simple story and an embarrassing story. Really, a very embarrassing story. I mean, you were not around then. It didn't make Lubavitch look good. The Rebbe was having a fight in public with his nephew. It didn't look good. On the outside, that's what it was. The Frierdiker passed away. There was an estate. There was a Yerusha. And there was a debate to whom the Yerusha belonged. And it blew up 35 years after the Frierdiker passed away. And they went to court, and we won. Didanotzach. I mean, that's really how the story looks on the outside, especially if you, A, don't pay attention, B, you're looking for reasons to say not nice things about Lubavitch. This is a very helpful opportunity. If you look a little deeper, what you'll find is that the Rebbe Rayatz, the Frierdiker Rebbe, incorporated Chabad. As soon as it came to America, as soon as it came to this country, the Frierdiker Rebbe made Chabad into a public organization called Agudas Chasidi Chabad. One of the most compelling proofs for this is the Frierdiker Rebbe lived in 770. Frierdiker Rebbe lived in 770, and he paid rent for his apartment. The Frierdiker Rebbe paid rent every month to live in his apartment on the second floor. So, did you know that the Frierdiker Rebbe paid rent? Now, I don't think the Rebbe Rashab or the Rebbe Marash in Lubavitch paid rent to, I don't know who. There was nobody to pay rent to. The Rebbe bought 770, and he didn't make it a private building. He made it a corporate, Agudas Chasidi Chabad. And I have a recording of Shmuel Isaac Popak telling the story how the Frierdiker Rebbe called him, and that I want you to be the business manager of 770 when they first bought the building in 1940. He says, come into me each month, I will give you a check for rent. The Rebbe paid rent to live in 770 because he made the building of 770 and the library and all of the belongings that which are called Lubavitch, he made them belong to the community. This is what he did. The tzaddik keneged taina, the other side taina, that he did all of these things because he wanted to save money on taxes. But really, it was his private property. If he wanted to save money on taxes, he could incorporate 770. He has to pay rent. He has to pay rent. Who's going to know if he paid rent or not? But this was really how the case developed. And the taina that brought to this case was that in earlier generations, that's how it was. It's true, in earlier generations, there were dinei Torah, there was a discussion about who owns the property of a Rebbe when a Rebbe passes away, and the Mishpacha did some kind of a division. That's the story on the outside. That's how the story looks on the outside. And it's not a big deal, and it doesn't make sense why the Rebbe would get it. The Rebbe got so upset, and the Rebbe talked about it so much, it was unbelievable. It consumed the Rebbe. It consumed the Rebbe. The Pashas HaSfarim. So you have to dig deeper. You have to dig deeper, you know. So the easiest place to dig deeper is to look at precedent, to look at previous cases, other similar circumstances, and see how it was understood, right? The Alter Rebbe went to jail, right? Why did the Alter Rebbe go to jail? Why did the Alter Rebbe go to jail? You want to be blunt? Because the Mistagdim didn't like him. That's why the Alter Rebbe went to jail. Mistagdim didn't like him. They mustn't. Does it matter why? They didn't like him. This was Misnagdim. This was his nephew. There's a vart for the Frierdiker Rebbe, I think, from Chassidim for sure, that Chassidus is such a deep thing. Only a Fruma Yid could have fought against it. And then later on, it wasn't enough. A Fruma Yid had to be a descendant of Chassidim. But the Frierdiker Rebbe was arrested by Lubavitch Chassidim, who had become Frei, of course. And then in our generation, it wasn't enough. Chassidim had to be the Rebbe's own family, right? But the Alter Rebbe, Fruma Yidden attacked Chassidus. By the Frierdiker Rebbe, the children of Chassidim attacked Chassidus. And by the Rebbe's Gesundheit, the Rebbe's own Mishpacha attacked Chassidus. That's Fabrengen material, that's Fabrengen material. So you look at the Alter Rebbe's arrest, you can say the same thing. There was a politics of Chassidim and Misnagdim. That itself is a vikuach that I don't want to review because it is in the past and we don't live in the past. But you could look at the Machlokes Chassidim and Misnagdim then in two very different ways. The Misnagdim made a mistake. There's no question Misnagdim made a mistake. The shaila is, was there kavanah l'shem shamayim or was there kavanah l'shem something else? And it depends, as we ask, it depends which people, depends which time. The Machlokes Chassidim and Misnagdim lasted for 50 years, literally for 50 years. From the times of the Baal Shem Tov till the end of the Alter Rebbe's Nesias. By the time the Mittler Rebbe became Rebbe, there was a truce. And by the time the Tzemach Tzedek became Rebbe, the Chassidim and Misnagdim were pushed friends. Pshutim hashmoy. So what's this Pada B'Shalom Mashi? Alter Rebbe makes such a yomtev out of it. Alter Rebbe went to jail because Misnagdim didn't like him. Doesn't matter why. He went to jail, they massed. And however you want to say it, they got himself a good lawyer. I mean the story is, now we know all the facts and all the details. Alter Rebbe had to defend himself. Alter Rebbe had to explain Chassidus. And the government said, okay, go. You're free to go. The second time around, when Alter Rebbe was freed from prison, they didn't let him leave. They freed Alter Rebbe from prison. They wanted to keep him in Petersburg. He stayed in Petersburg almost a whole year, until one of the officers of Russia said that if he'll let the Alter Rebbe live in his land, he'll watch the Alter Rebbe. He shouldn't make trouble, as if the Alter Rebbe is going to make trouble. Which is why the Alter Rebbe moved from Liyazna to Liyadi, and he spent the last 11 years of his life living in Liyadi. And in the world, he's called Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liyadi, even though he was born in Liyazna, and he spent most of his Rebbeship in Liyazna. He's identified as a Rebbe of Liyadi because he spent the last 10 or 11 years in Liyadi. And the truth of the matter is, those were the biggest years, the richest years. The Alter Rebbe was the greatest Rebbe at the end of his life, which of course makes sense. But b'chol eifer, be that as it may, when you look at the Alter Rebbe story, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? The Alter Rebbe made a Yom Tov, and he said, the Alter Rebbe wrote a note, people are going to keep this Yom Tov till Mashiach comes. When the Alter Rebbe was released from prison, the Chassidim were very afraid that people should forget it. So they wanted to make minhagim. They wanted to make a minute between a Megillah and Fashid and Azach. And the Alter Rebbe wrote a note. This Yom Tov is going to be forever. And explained what the Yom Tov is about. Now, what's the big deal? Chassidim, how do you say it in Grob Amerikanish? Chassidim and Misnagdim had a fight, and the Misnagdim lost. That's Yutas Kislev? Really? That's the Rosh Hashanah Chassidus, the whole thing, the whole Indian? So the Rabbeim talked about these things. So the Rabbeim talked about Yutas Kislev, and the Rebbe talked about Chamisha B'Teves. And when you understand what the Rabbeim talked about, you have two choices. Really, you have two choices. You have only two choices. There's no third choice. To believe him or not to believe him. The Alter Rebbe explained Yutas Kislev, they made it into a big Yom Tov. The Rebbe spoke about Chamisha B'Teves, made it into a big Yom Tov. Because of what we call the pneumistic explanations of these Yom Tovim. You can't be on the fence about this. Either the Rebbe is a Rebbe, he's not a Rebbe. No thing is a halfway Rebbe. If a Rebbe tells you something is going on Lamaila, either believe him or don't believe him. If you don't believe him, then you should say Tachlan and Teves, Chamisha B'Teves. If you do believe him, what's going on? Why the Alter Rebbe's Yutas Kislev is a Yom Tov? The Chamisha B'Teves we're not sure about. Why we're not sure? Why? Because it happened more recently. And because it happened more recently, it says holy. It's a funny thing about people. You can be in the presence of the biggest tzaddik, but because he's in a neshama beguf, you see a person, and you forget what's going on. Like I said before, I'm going to be a good boy today. No. I'm going to try very hard to be a good boy. Which was very hard to be a very, very good boy. So what did the Alter Rebbe say about Yitzchak Kislev? The Alter Rebbe said about Yitzchak Kislev that when he was in jail, he was visited by his Rabbi, the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid, who had passed away decades before. And they came to him in a goof. And the Rebbe explained in a Sikha that because they came in a goof, they were considered in this world. And because they were considered in this world, they're able to paskin halacha. Because Teira lei b'shamayim, Teira is not in shamayim. And the Shamim Ganei cannot paskin halacha. Kutchabrichu, the Eibishter can't paskin halacha. The Gemara says manechach. If you have to paskin halacha, you need afka neshama beguf. So they came in a body, and the Alter Rebbe asked them, there's a Hakdama to the Maisa, which people say, I don't know what the mocked of it is. The Hakdama to the Maisa is that they came into the Baal Shem Tov, Alter Rebbe's cell, and the Baal Shem Tov said to the Maggid, Zogem ezol zogen Teire. The Baal Shem Tov said to the Maggid, tell him to say Teire. Because the Alter Rebbe was not the Baal Shem Tov's Talmud, he was the Maggid's Talmud. So quote unquote, the Alter Rebbe doesn't have to listen to the Baal Shem Tov. So the Baal Shem Tov said to the Maggid, who was his Talmud, tell your Talmud you should say Teire. So the Alter Rebbe said a Teire in this jail cell, which was a very small room. And when he finished, the Baal Shem Tov said to the Maggid, sagt Punkt wie ich habe es dir übergegeben. He says it exactly the way I gave it to you. The Alter Rebbe's Teire was very different than the Baal Shem Tov's Teire. Bechitzenius. It was a whole different form. But the Baal Shem Tov told the Maggid, what he's saying is exactly what I said. And then the Alter Rebbe asked his Rabbeim, this part is famous, why am I in jail? And they told him, because you're spreading too much chassidus. So the Alter Rebbe said, so when I'll stop, I'll go out. They said, no, when you go out, you'll do even more. In other words, whether you should have done it and put yourself at the Makam Sakara to go to jail is one question. But once you did it, and you're going to jail for it, and you're suffering Yisurim for it, and your life is at risk because of it, when you go out of jail, you should do even more. You should spread Chassidus even more. So the Alter Rebbe, when out of jail, he wrote a famous letter. He wrote many copies of this letter. We're not sure how many, but he wrote this letter to Chassidim, and he wrote it to Kama V'Kama Talmidei HaMaggid, and where he writes that the Goyim saw that we're right. The Goyim, the Sorim and the Amim. So the Rebbe spoke about this many times. Who cares what Goyim think? A Goy decided that the Alter Rebbe is right, that's a Yom Tov. So the Rebbe said, because a Goy has no Bchira Chofshus. When it comes to Yonim of Yiddishkeit, a Goy has no free will. When it comes to Yonim of Yiddishkeit, the Goy has no Bchira. So when the Goy vindicates Chassidus, the Eibush vindicates Chassidus. So faket, the Raya, that Lemaila on high, whatever kitruk, whatever critique there was against Chassidus was removed by the virtue of the fact that the Alter Rebbe went out of jail, so it was vindicated. So this is what the Yom Tov the Alter Rebbe made. The Alter made a Yom Tov, Yitzchak Kislev, not because he went to jail and he survived. That's why the Chassidim made a Yom Tov. The Alter Rebbe made a Yom Tov, Yitzchak Kislev, because Yitzchak Kislev is about Chassidus. Chassidus is a new level of Torah. And when you bring Torah into the world shakes. I don't know if you've ever seen this, and you probably haven't seen it. There's a book, you may have heard of this book, it's a pretty famous book. It's called Sefer HaZayah. You ever heard of the Sefer HaZayah? Yeah, the Pshim Bayachai word HaZayah, a long time ago. 1800 years ago, 1700 years ago. And the Sefer HaZayah was discovered in a oitzer, and it was...
Part of the deal is that you stay here for the rest of the class. Why?
And it was rediscovered. It's not clear how long ago. Some people say 1,000 years ago. Some people say 750 years ago. But the Zohar was printed the first time in the year Shin Chof. Shin Chof is 1560. You have to understand the whole printing press started in the early 1500s, the late 1400s. So it was one of the first Sfarim printed with the Sefer HaZayah. When the Sefer HaZayah was printed, it has a haskama from a Yid named Rabbi Yitzchak Dilach. It's printed in all the Zayahs. And if you ever read that haskama, it's worthwhile to read. It's long. It's very long. This is a Yid, I don't know who he is. It was a big tzaddik, it was a big god, it was a big makubal, who gave permission to publish the Zohar. And you could see his fear. He's so afraid to print a Zayar. You can think the world is going to, what, you print a book? Big deal. He talks about the world shaking because you're printing a book. Because Torah B'chlal and Pnimis HaTorah B'frat is godliness. You bring godliness into the world shakes. And there's repercussions. When the world shakes, things fall off the table. It's not pashut. The Rabbi and the tzaddikim are Meisa Nefesh to bring more of Pnimis HaTorah into the world and even more of Pnimis HaTorah into the world. And we don't see it and we don't understand it and we don't feel it. But the Rabbeim do. Do you guys know the story of the Ayin Beis? Anybody know the story of the Ayin Beis? There's a Sefer of Chassidus called Ayin Beis, which is now in the new print. It's going to be 6 krochim. It's already 5. There's going to be a 6th. The Rebbe printed the Ayin Beis in 1977, a year before the heart attack. When the Rebbe printed the Sikha, the Maimed Ayin Beis, the Rebbe said, "I was afraid to print it. I'm afraid." So I decided that we're going to print it all together. The Ayin Beis, if you ever look in the beginning of the Ayin Beis, you'll see nobody signs his name. Nobody signs his name. The Ayin Beis was printed by nobody. It doesn't even say the name of the publishing house. Lubavitcher's Sfarim, when they're printed, have a title page, a Psach Davar, a Mavoy, and it says that the Rebbe used to sign his own name on in the early years. Then later, when the Rebbe could not be personally responsible for every sefer, the Rebbe used to write Mareches Eitzer Achsidim. The Ayin Beis is printed without a signature. No one knows who printed it. It's like anonymous. The Rebbe collected $1 from every chassid. He wanted every Lubavitcher to be a shutah for the Ayin Beis by giving $1. And the Rebbe said, "I'm afraid to print it." I heard from behind the scenes that when the label Groner Olav Shalom brought the Ayin Beis into the Rebbe, the first klach, the Rebbe was so happy you could dance. He was so happy. But the Rebbe was afraid to print the Ayin Beis. And of course, the Dervish Rishubas will tell you, he printed the Ayin Beis the first time, he had a heart attack. He printed the Ayin Beis the second time and had a stroke. The second time the Ayin Beis was printed was the winter of Nun Beis. People say this. The Rebbe was afraid to print the Ayin Beis. What's the big deal? You're printing a book. Now, we don't understand these things. But Pnimis HaTorah is a shock to the world. When you shock to the world reacts. You want to know something really crazy? I mean, you guys are Baruch Hashem asleep, so you're not interrupting me. But unfortunately, you're asleep, so you're not paying attention.
Let them have it. Wake them up. Controversial stuff. It's a shred
There was a Gzeiras Tachvatat. You ever heard of Gzeiras Tachvatat? Yeah? Oh, you heard Gzeiras Tachvatat? 1648, 1649, they killed hundreds of thousands of Yidden. They killed hundreds of thousands of Yidden. In percentages, the Gzeiras Tachvatat killed many more than Hitler did. More than Hitler. Not in numbers, but in percentages. They killed so many Yidden. The Friedricher Rebbe writes in a Sikha that the year of the Gzeiras Tachvatat, they printed the Shalom in Eishis Merabois. That's a Sefer of Kabbalah. But they didn't print it in Rashi Yosis like they printed most Svarah. They printed in Eishis Merabois. And the implication was that this created such a tumult that you print a book and people die? What's the connection? The answer is Pnimis HaTorah, B'chlal Torah, but Pnimis HaTorah, godliness brought into the world gives a shake. So the Baal Shem Tov came into the world, revealed Chassidus. The Alter Rebbe was his Talmid, the student of his student, whose job it was to bring it down to the Madreg of Chochmah Bina V'Das, and he did it. And he went to jail for it. And you could say in Das Tachten he knew he would go to jail for it. But that was his shlichus, that was his mission, to bring Chassidus Chabad into the world. So when he went out of jail, the Alter Rebbe did not see it. The Alter Rebbe did not make Yutas Kislev because we won the color war with the Misnagdim. You understand? That's so silly. Alter Rebbe did not make a Yom Tov and write that it's going to be a Yom Tov till Mashiach comes because the Misnagdim didn't like us and we won. That's not why he made a Yom Tov. The Alter Rebbe didn't see Misnagdim as Misnagdim. If you look at the Alter Rebbe wrote about them. What did the Alter Rebbe write when he came out of jail? Do not make fun of them. Don't act condescendingly. We treat them with respect. The Gersh Lakedesh Kotenti, the Alter Rebbe wrote when he came out of jail, and the whole Teuchen of that letter is to be respectful to the Misnagdim who put him in jail. The Alter Rebbe made a Yom Tov Yutas Kislev because he understood that this was not a physical thing, it was a spiritual thing. And the Rebbe spoke about Hey Teves exactly the same way. The Rebbe spoke about Chamisha B'Teves exactly the same way 3 times. When I say 3 times, I don't mean 3 sichos. I mean 3 groupings of sichos. The Rebbe spoke about the Svarim 3 times. The first time is when the whole thing started, which was the summer of 1985. The second time was when the case was actually happening in the courts, which is Chanukah time of the end of 85 to the beginning of 86, which is about 6 months later. And the Rebbe Fabreg like 3 times in 2 days. And what I just shared is in those sichos, where the Rebbe talked about the Alter Rebbe's making a Yom Tov out of Yotis Kislev, because it was a kitrug on Chassidus. It was a challenge to the whole idea of Chassidus. And the Rebbe asked the question famously, I don't understand. There was a kitrug on Chassidus. And the Alter Rebbe went to jail. And the Alter Rebbe was released from prison, which is a proof that Chassidus is a good thing. So why did Mittel Rebbe go to jail again? Why did Fiedrich Rebbe go to jail again? Why did I go to jail again? Why did the Sfarim have to be taken? The Rebbe talked about the Sfarim being taken for 770 like as if he went to jail. And the Rebbe answered, because if you reveal more, you have a new kitrug. Alter Rebbe revealed Chassidus in his way. There was a kitrug against that, and then you just kiss it, that kitrug was lifted. The Mitla Rebbe revealed Chassidus so much more. So it was a new kitrug. It's the same Chassidus, but it's a new level of Gilui and a new level of kitrug. So he went to jail also. That when he was released from prison, every later Rebbe reveals more, and when you reveal more, there's a new kitrug. And the Rebbe spoke about us, about himself. Why is there a whole situation with Sfarim? And the answer is because in Yomagala, Mor, Lakus, the world fights back. The world resists, and it creates in this world a hell of a hesed. And this is why this story happened. Chavra, I want you to understand something, and I really do not want to talk about this, but I just want you to understand. The story with the books makes no sense. It's such a stupid story. If you understand the political, the family politics that are behind this story, and that's what it was family politics. It's a silly, stupid, sad story about people who were really better than this. They really were. If you understand the players in the story of the books, the 2 sides, it's such a sad story. It's so embarrassing. It's so sad. It's so pathetic. There's no way to explain this story. It doesn't make any sense.
What do you mean by stupid?
It should never have happened. It shouldn't have happened. It doesn't make any sense. These are intelligent people. The only explanation is that the Satan sich da reingelegt. That's the only explanation. The Satan got involved over here, and on a big level. To Fafira mentioned to take people who are not on this level b'chlal, to push it, lose their minds, and act in ways that created this whole thing. The story doesn't make sense on a book level. It just doesn't. It doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. It shouldn't have happened. The only explanation is the one that Rebbe gave. That this is an Inyan Ruchni. This whole thing is a spiritual thing. And it's an attack against Chassidus. It's an attack against Chassidus. And therefore, when the case was won, the Rebbe made officially a Yom Tov. Just like the Alter Rebbe made Yotis Kislev officially a Yom Tov, the Rebbe made Yotis Kislev, Chamisha B'Teves officially a Yom Tov. And I'll explain to you what that means. I mean, Chassidim are nuts. I think we all know that. The tragedy with Lubavitch is that we're becoming normal, which is really terrible. It's really, really not good. Chassidim are crazy. We have a Yom Tov every other day. You know, the Haman, when the Haman came to Achashverosh to complain about the Yidden, what did he say? Every day they have a Yom Tov. Today they can't work because it's your Shvat. Today they can't work because it's a Kislev. Today they can't work because the day before, the day after. Yidden are arbeiten nicht. They're parasiten. They're always celebrating something. Chassidim have a Yom Tov on Ashir. You know how many Didan Notzachs there are? Maybe a dozen. If you know the people who keep score, there's so many days of Didan Notzach. But the Rebbe didn't make those days into Yom Tovim. The Rebbe made one day into Yom Tov, only one. The Rebbe did not even make Rosh Chodesh Kislev into Yom Tov. Rosh Chodesh Kislev is the Yom Tov we made. Chamisha B'Teves is a Yom Tov that the Rebbe personally announced. And when did he do it? He didn't do it in 1987. He did it in 1988. And there's a big misconception. In 1987, we run the books. You know what the Rebbe said? I wasn't here. I was in California, but we got news. We got the updates from hour to hour. When we won this trial in '87, the Rebbe said, "Let's forget about the whole story. Let's make believe it never happened. Don't read the judge's verdict. Don't read the minutes of the trial. Don't talk about it. Don't celebrate it. Forget about it. That's what happened in '87." The Rebbe said, "Let's not talk about it." Then you may know the story that when the books came back and people were waiting outside, the Rebbe got so upset. The Rebbe got so upset that people were waiting outside. The Rebbe screamed all the way to the Yoel, Kiyadua. So when the next Chamisha B'Teves came, when 1988 came, they were afraid. They didn't know what to do. The year before, the Rebbe said, make nothing of it. When Chassidim stood outside, when the Rebbe went to the oil because the Sfarim were coming back, the Rebbe got so upset. The leadership of Lubavitch was frozen. Didn't know what to do. The Rebbe sat down to the Fabrengen in Shabbos, and again, I was again not here. I missed every detail. Hey Teves, Chamisha B'Teves, I was away. It's just one of those Protestant. I left literally the night that Rebbe called the meeting of Good Chassidim Chabad. I was on a plane to California. But the Rebbe spoke, it was our first time Yibis Tam, was our first week of Shlichus. We missed the whole thing. Everything connected to Chamisha B'Teves, I know from far. It's just one of those. I was here Chafei Chesh when I was here. And Beis Kislev Yehuda, I was sitting and learning in 770. I remember the guys flying in and picking up Tilims to start learning. It was hysterical. I didn't know what was going on. I was inside 770, with all due respect. Why? Because I wasn't afraid that I was going to run away. I wasn't an Rebbe watcher. It wasn't my thing. Maybe it's a chsan. I was sitting and learning. I remember the door opens and people fly in. Everybody grabs a book. Whatever you picked up. Because the Rebbe got so upset. The boys didn't know what to do with themselves. So the Rebbe starts the Fabrengen. Shabbos, Memches, by saying, he quoted the Gemara about Chanukah, L'shon Acheres Kolu. That when the Ness of Chanukah happened, and the Chazal were not sure if Chanukah should be a Yom Tov. You know that? When Chanukah, when the miracle of Chanukah, and the same is true by Purim, the Gemara says the same thing by Purim. That Esther had to negotiate with the Chacham, they should make it into a Yom Tov. But the story of Chanukah, they did not want to make a Yom Tov. Why? Because the Chashmonaim went on a suicide mission. You're not allowed to take suicide missions. Take B'chatayra. A whole year later, the Chacham said, no, the Eibishter confirms this. The Eibishter supports this Mesiras Nefesh. Al Kiddush Hashem. So it took a whole year for the Chacham to make Chanukah into a Yom Tov, and that's what happened here. The beginning, the Rebbe said, don't say anything from it. Then a year later, the Rebbe officially announced the Yom Tov, and you don't need to believe me, because everything I'm telling you is written in book, line and verse. You look it up. It's an edited Fabrengen. I think that Yechei Chamisha B'Teves was a Thursday, so it was Shabbos. Zayin Teves, F Shema Chatos, where the Rebbe started the Fabrengen by saying, I may be wrong, maybe it was Chamisha B'Teves Shabbos, L'shon Achar Kav, made official Yom Tov. And the Rebbe right away said, what are the minhagim of the Yom Tov? Just like a Yitis Kislev, Yid Kasher, that's not a minig from the Alter Rebbe, but yeah, Yitis Kislev, Chamisha B'Teves, you buy Sfarim. The minig of Chamisha B'Teves is around Sfarim. You buy Sfarim, you donate Sfarim to libraries, you bind old Sfarim, and of course, I'm sorry to break your hearts, you open up the books and look inside and try to understand what's written there. You'll learn in this Sfarim. Chamisha B'Teves is a Yom Tov and Sfarim. But the Sfarim is the mitzvahs hayoim. It's the rituals of the day. It's like you're reading the Megillah. But what's the story? The story is a story of a kitrug against Chassidim and Chassidus. And the Dinan Notzach, the vindication is the vindication of Chassidus. This is the story of Chamisha B'Teves as the Rebbe explained it. So I was reading in a book about the Mendel Futterfass. I just finished his biography now. There's a number of biographies of his. It's not his biography, it's his stories. Where the Mendel Futterfass said that when he was a Bacher, Yibis Tammuz happened. Yibis Tammuz happened in 1927, Tavish Beis Zayin. The Mendel was about 21 years old at that time, I think, if I'm not wrong. And there was a new Yom Tov, Yibis Tammuz. So it became a whole shaila. Which Yom Tov is bigger, Yibis Tammuz or Yitis Kislev? And you could almost predict what happened. The big Chassidim with the big heads and the slow moving behinds, right? Because they're thoughtful people, yeah. Yibis Tammuz is a big Yom Tov, but Yitis Kislev, Yitis Kislev. Are you kidding? Yitis Kislev, it's a whole nother level. And the Meshuggah and the Bachram are screaming, are you nuts? This is our Yitis Kislev. Yitis Kislev happened 6 generations ago. This is a fresh Yitis Kislev. So when are you going to celebrate the old one? The old one shouldn't be thrown in the garbage. It's never going to be. But this is our Yitis Kislev. So now you fast forward another 60 years. and you have Chamisha B'Teves, Tafshin Mem Zayin, Tafshin Mem Ches. The Rebbe is Kiveya Yom Tov, right? The Rebbe is a Yom Tov, and you got people saying the same stupidity. Yeah, it's a Yom Tov, but who says you shouldn't say Tachnun? The Rebbe said Tachnun. It's true, the Rebbe did say Tachnun twice. But what the Rebbe did is the Rebbe's business. What we do is what Chassidim do. If the Rebbe is Kaveya Yom Tov, ask any child on Yom Tov, you say Tachnun. I'm asking you a question. Yom Tov, you say Tachnun. Chanukah, you say Tachnun. Purim, you say Tachnun. Figure Shaila. It's a Shaila if you say Tachnun on a Yom Tov. It's a Yom Tov or not. Well, you don't understand. I do understand. You don't understand. It's just one of those weird things. It's a funny thing. If I tell you a story about a tzaddik who lived 200 years ago, you automatically assume he's a bigger tzaddik than a tzaddik who's alive today. It's a weird thing. Somehow, if it's happening now, it can't be that important. Can't be that holy. There never was a Rebbe like ours. There never was a Rebbe like ours. And there was a never Yom Tov like a Chamisha B'Teves. And the idea that we're not sure. The Rebbe said buy books. The Rebbe said buy books. The mitzvah hayom is buying books. Oh, but the pnimius of the Yom is a didanotzach for Chassidus. And this is what we're celebrating. This is what we're celebrating. But there's 2 points about that I want to share. There's 2, like I said, I'm being a very good boy. I'm being well behaved. I'm not going off the handle today, even though, according to some people, I already did. There's there's 2 things. My wife got so many videos of me acting like I'm a sugar, and she said, Yossi, she said, what Micha Bashol told David HaMelech. And I answered it what David told Micha Bashol, but she didn't buy it.
I promise you not to create this video to come out of this room.
They're worse, Lexi. Said that arrogant. Said that arrogant. I don't know why it gets me crazy. I push it snap. When this inyan of Tachna comes up, I lose myself. I have no ability to contain myself. It happened twice already this year. Ich kann es nicht vertragen. And the whole idea of a person is moyach shalt al alev. The whole idea of a person is midas tevis. Derech eretz. A Rav says, say Tachna, I platzt. I push it, I can't take it. I don't know. It's visceral. It's visceral. And it's not hate tevis that bothers me so much. It's, how could you not get it? How could you? And the people who are saying to say Tachna were there. They're not you, they're kids. They saw the Rebbe's Agmas Nefesh. They were at those Fabrengens. They heard the Rebbe scream his neshama out. They were there. And they did, the Rebbe couldn't walk. The Rebbe couldn't walk. He crawled into a Fabrengen. The Rebbe was in so much pain. And everybody understood that it was because of the Sfarim. I push it. I can't understand how you could be a Lubavitcher. And you were then there. And you don't appreciate, how serious the Kitrug was. The Rebbe was upset because of his nephew? Really? That's what you think of the Rebbe? The Rebbe had a fight with his nephew like it says in the newspapers? You put your life in the Rebbe's hands. You need an operation. And the Rebbe spends a half a second, reading your paper and making a scribble on that decision, make operation, no operation. This is the same Rebbe who was fighting with his nephew about books? Really? That's what you think of the Rebbe? That's what you think of the Rebbe? The Rebbe fought this war like a lion. The Rebbetzin passed away over this. A lot of people say that. It's very, very reasonable. The Rebbetzin, when she was interviewed, you know this, when the Rebbetzin was interviewed, the Rebbetzin said that my sister called me up to speak to me about the books. And I said to my sister, Miram gehata dritten Schwester. Und sie ist umgekommen beim Deutsch. We had another sister who died in the camps. Wenn es kommt zu den Zwarem, bin ich wie jene Schwester. Ich bin tot. You can see it in the interview. She says it. The Rebbe says, when it comes to the books, I'm like our other sister. I am dead. You know what it means for tzedkanos like the Rebbe to say such words? You know how careful she was with words? And she says it in the deposition.
What does she mean?
She said the words, Ich bin tot. More than once. And there's a Gemara Mefareshes. There's a Gemara that you find when Tanoim and Ameroyim said things which claimished, but Ba'anta Dishmuel, when they said things just off the cuff, and then the words came to pass. The Rebbetzin said about herself, Ich bin tot, und kach have. You think this is a simple story? And people have a question whether Chamisha B'Teves adds up to Yitzchak Kislev or Yibistabel. And the Raya is because the Rebbe said Tachman. Really? You have no sensitivity to the Rebbe at all. None. And I could start talking about that, and there's so much to say. The Rebbe once said to somebody, I don't have a single chassid. Nobody cares about me. No one cares about me. How could you not appreciate the earnestness of this day, and therefore the joy of this day? But anyway, I told you I'm not going to go crazy, so I'm not going to go crazy. Baruch Hashem, this whole class is not going to be on the internet. The last 2 seconds, they're going to make a clip and send it around the Machaya. That's my claim to him. I believe me. If I am associated with Chamisha Ben Teves, it could be no greater chus. I said to my wife, "Al Rebbe said me just kislev didn't go off the handle. Was meinst du? Oh, mech shadal just kislev." It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's beseder. If this is the biggest I've made, I'm accused of doing. There's 2 things to the story, and I want to say the second thing first, because the second thing is haka mind-boggling. The Rebbe said like this: the Alter Rebbe went to jail because Chassidim were not using the Chassidus he gave. He gave them Chassidus, they were not using it enough. Because he wasn't using it enough, there was a kitrug. What was the way to deal with the kitrug? How do you fix it? To do more. When you have a kitrug against Chassidus, you solve the kitrug by doing more. This was the solution. Yeah? But the Mittler Rebbe, the kitrug against Chassidus. Why the Mittler Rebbe gave? Wow, did he give? And the Chassidim were not using it enough. What's the solution? To do more. So the Rebbe said, listen to this. The Rebbe said in the Sikh of Chamisha B'Teves, I think you used to have bigger payas. I think you used to have bigger payas. And we made a condition that those payas are going to be at Me'ev Esem Shana. The payas were good. You know why? They made you look funny, but it made you stay away from Aveda a little more. I'm talking to him. He's looking in the wrong place. I'm talking to him, the guy in the front, this guy here. What's the issue with the payas? You don't have to grow payas, but you grow, you're not allowed to cut them. David Schleimer, you don't have to grow payas, it's not Chabad. But the payas, a good thing, they're a good thing. They're a good thing, you don't get rid of them. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm picking on you. The camera at least doesn't know who you are. And your friends don't care, unfortunately. I'm going to... On the day we won the case, on the day that we won the case, Chamisha B'Teves Toshmem Zayin, the Rebbe spoke after Mincha. You know what the Rebbe said? That the reason for the taking of the Sfarim is because Chabad is not doing enough. Chabad is not doing enough. Same thing out the Rebbe. But the Rebbe said, and please do not believe me, get the tape, get the transcript, read it black on white yourself. It's impossible to say in our generation that we didn't do enough. The Rebbe said that. It's impossible to say that in our generation we didn't do enough. It's impossible to say. And the Rebbe said this 40 years ago. Now, Chabad, Lubavitch, Shlichus is 10 times as big. The Rebbe said then, it's impossible to say we didn't do enough. You cannot say that the kitrog that led to the taking of the Sfarim and this whole terrible struggle, which ended in the Dida Notzach, is because Chabad was not active enough. The only way to explain it is that we're getting a message from the Eibishter that he wants us to do more. And I want you to think about this. When the Alter Rebbe went to jail, the explanation was because he's not revealing enough. The Chassidim are not using it well enough. When the Mittler Rebbe went to jail, the explanation was because the Rebbe is revealing too much, Chassidim are not using it well enough, it's not being taken advantage of. Well, we go to jail, and we all know exactly how great we are. When the Rebbe goes to jail, Deir Hashvi, the Rebbe says we've done more than enough. The only way such a thing could happen is because the Eibishter wants us to do more. The Rebbe is putting us, the Rebbe, in his own words, in a level which, I know how stupid this sounds and how silly it is, on a pedestal higher than the Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe's Chassidim, their Rebbe went to jail because they didn't use the Chassidus. And the Rebbe is saying about himself, I went to jail. Not because my Chassidim didn't do enough, but because we're getting a message from the Eibishter that we have to do even more. This is what the Rebbe said. Now, again, I am framing it, but it's the Reisis Harav. You look up the Sikha and you'll see that the Rebbe said it. That's the first thing you need to understand about this parasha. Dida Notzach. The Yom Tov of Chamisha B'Teves. What are we celebrating? But then there's number 2. And the number 2 is extremely, extremely important. And it's really everything about us now. I mentioned to you before that the Rebbe spoke about the Sfarim 3 times. When he first spoke about it in the summer of 85. During the trial itself, which was the winter of 86, the fall winter of 86. And then when we won the case, which was the winter of 87, a year later, Each time the Rebbe spoke about it from a different angle. Everything I said until now was the second time and the third time. What did the Rebbe speak in the beginning? When the case of the Sfarim first broke, when the Rebbe spoke about it, was Tov Shem Hey. How did the Rebbe speak about the Sfarim at that point? The Rebbe spoke about the Sfarim in the following way. Okay, I need you to pay attention now, please. Okay, listen to me. He started off by saying that a life of a tzaddik is not biological. The life of a tzaddik is not a physical life. Most people, their life is their food, their clothing, their homes, their cars, their businesses. This is their life. Okay, they do mitzvahs also, but their life is their physical thing, physical things. When a person passes away and his guf passes away, his life is over. A life of a tzaddik was never his physical things, never. The life of a tzaddik is Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem and Emunas Hashem, like it says in Tanya about the Alter Rebbe wrote this. The life of a tzaddik is Yiddishkeit. The life of a tzaddik is Teda Mitzvahs. And therefore, there cannot be by tzaddikim misa. Tzaddikim don't die. If your life is your guf, when your guf goes away, you stop living. But if your life is your neshama, if your life is Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem and Emunas Hashem, that doesn't die. So by tzaddikim, there's no hefsek, there's no interruption in their life. And the Rebbe absolutely used the word physical life. There's no interruption in the physical life of a tzaddik, because the life of a tzaddik is a lakus, is spirituality, and spirituality doesn't die. So where is that life? As the Rebbe said, there was a levaya. Somebody sent me a message, there was a levaya. Yesterday. Where is the Rebbe? So there's two answers to that question. Number one, in the things that he used, in the home he lived in the Sfarim he used, in the Talis and Tefillin he wore, the physical possessions that the Rebbe had, have the Rebbe in them. Like it says in Kisvei Arizal, Kedusha Leizozam Emkei Marisha Legamri, when holiness goes to a place, it never leaves it, and the Rebbe is present. And that's why the Rebbe said, when you take a book that the Frierdiker put on the table, and you move it from here to here, it's like he took the Frierdiker's hand and moved it. It's disrespectful, and it hurts him. When the Rebbe spoke about the Sfarim the first time, he said, you pick up a book from the Rebbe's house and you take it and you put it in a place where the Rebbe doesn't want it, you are causing physical pain to the Rebbe. That's how the Rebbe described it. You are causing physical pain to the Rebbe by moving books. Because those books are his life.
What does it mean, physical pain?
The Rebbe actually said, this is a story which doesn't get talked about much. The Rebbe said that having a sefer from the Rebbe's library, which was taken illegally, is like having a live bomb in your house. And the Rebbe said, I could see clearly those bombs will explode. A day before, the Rebbe said that. A day before, a day after, you should know that if you bought a sefer from this library that was sold illegally, I don't know how much you care, the Rebbe didn't say that, but it was implicit. You should know it's a lebedike bombe. Und es wird platzen. Nobody wants live ordinances in their basement, you understand? You find a bomb from World War II, you call the bomb squad, you don't say you have a relic. These are bombs, the Rebbe said they're going to explode. Because every sefer is a shtickle Rebbe. That's what the Rebbe said. The Rebbe lives in his Sfarim. And you cannot take Sfarim of a person who's still alive and divide them. They're screaming, there was a Levaya. And I'm screaming, he's alive. The Rebbe said before bringing, how can he and I talk? We don't speak the same language. He talks about death. He talks about end. He talks about a Levaya. And I say the Rebbe is more alive today than yesterday. So the Rebbe says, Stell sich vor, was war das Sofim Mishutefes zu Franzischen uns. You can hear the tape. The Rebbe is so upset. We can't talk to each other. Because we speak two different languages. He speaks the language of Levaya and death and physicality. And I'm speaking the language of Teda. Teda says, Chaya Tzadik Einam Chaim Besadim. But there's another thing, and this is even more important. If a tzaddik's life is emun and yireh nava, ruchnias, and the physical life of the tzaddik vayochel is interrupted, you can't see him. And you say that because it's a spiritual metzias, spirituality never ends, so the Rebbe is alive, just like he was before, yeah? Where is he? So he's in the psarim that he used, in the chair that he sat on, in the home that he lived in the walls that he walked. And he is in the people who learn his Torah. He is in the people who walk in his ways. He's in the people who follow him. The Rebbe lives in every chassid. That's what the Rebbe said. And the Rebbe said, if you will look at chassidim and you will understand that the Rebbe lives in chassidim, you'll come to only one conclusion. That today, the Rebbe is more alive than he was yesterday. And yesterday, the Rebbe is more alive than he was 2 days ago. And 2 days ago, the Rebbe is more alive than he was 3 days ago. Because look at us. The biggest raya that the Rebbe is alive is Chassidus, is Lubavitch, is us. And the world is screaming, it's different, Baba Maises. So this is how the Rebbe explained it. When the Rebbe said there's a kitter against Chassidus, and that Chamisha B'Teves was the vindication of that kitter, the first thing he said was, it's impossible to say we didn't do enough. The only explanation is because they want us to do more. That's numero uno. And number two, it has to be the pshat. Number two, that in every chassid the Rebbe lives, ubemela, the Rebbe is more alive today than yesterday, and more alive yesterday before. How can you divide the estate of a living person? They're screaming it's private property. And the Rebbe said, you're right, private property, but who does it belong to? It belongs to the Eibishter. It belongs to the Rebbe. It belongs to Lakus. It belongs to the kinds of things that cannot die. So when the Rebbe spoke about the Svarim, he said, Hu B'chayim, the Rebbe's alive. The Rebbe used very strong expressions. My brother, I got a message from my brother this morning, that the Rebbe said in one of the sichas that every chassid is an admur, every chassid has a Rebbe inside of him. We all have inside of us the Rebbe. The Rebbe lives in us, with us, and through us to the whole world. And the Rebbe screamed, the idea that you can take a book and say so-and-so passed away, when that person's not only alive, he's more alive today than he was yesterday, even though you were by his levaya. So the Rebbe says, you understand the problem? You understand the problem? The problem is he speaks one language and I speak a different language. So when you live in Crown Heights and you go into a shul of Chamisha B'Teves and it's a fashlof and a tog, and it's a mitzvah to say tachlan, it's Thursday, we're talking about Rachel Meichet. What's the teretz? They speak that other language. They speak that other language. Because there's two sufis that are not meshutaf. There's two languages. You cannot put them in the same plate. If you're looking at things physically, if you're looking at things in terms of levayas, it's one world. But if you're looking at things spiritually, if you're looking at things through your eyes, the life of a tzaddik is not a physical life. It's Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem and Emunas Hashem. And you look, kids whose parents don't remember the Rebbe. This is what we're holding today. We're not talking to the third generation. Kids whose parents were little before Gimel Tammuz. Not only the parents shluchim, the children are shluchim. They lived their whole lives to serve with great Mesiras Nefesh. You need a bigger raya why Chamisha B'Teves is a Yom Tov. Don't you people understand? The minute someone connects Chamisha B'Teves to Svarim, they don't know what Chamisha B'Teves is. It happened with Svarim. It's not about Svarim. It's about the Rebbe. And it's about us. I think I told this to you once before. I have a Misnagdisha cousin who, of course, doesn't like the fact that we say the Rebbe is Mashiach, but he would never suspect me of being that crazy. So, see, ask me about the other guys. They're the Meshuggah. Why did the Lubavitcher say that the Rebbe is Mashiach and not somebody else? And I gave him the wrong answer. The answer I was supposed to give him was, they're Taka Meshuggah, the intelligent ones, the Miyushavim. He said to me, why not David HaMelech? I said, I gave him an answer. I said, because the Rebbe's influence on the world grows every day. The Rebbe's more Rebbe. There's more people coming to the Rebbe than ever. Go to the oil and just stand and watch who comes in. Every hour of the day and night, people coming to the Rebbe. One of my favorite stories is a lady shows up Shabbos morning and she asks another lady how to help her write a pidyon. So the lady tells her Shabbos Peter and says, no, don't worry, ich bin a goy. I can write that Shabbos. Just tell me how I'm supposed to write it. With the halacha, you're not allowed to help a goy build a mizbeach, but you can show him how. Because the goy can build a mizbeach any place. Only Yidden are allowed to build mizbeach. Only Yidden have a veistach. Only in Yerushalayim. You understand? So you are kids, you're bachrim, and you're hearing the story for the first time, for the second time, for the third time. You have to understand the story. It happens to me so often. that people, when they think about Hey Teves, they become embarrassed. They're almost ashamed of what happened. They're ashamed of how the Rebbe reacted. The Rebbe spent so much time talking about a fight with his nephew, but that's not what happened. If you speak the language of the other side, it doesn't make sense that the Rebbe fought. He should have given in. And yeah, Chamisha B'Teves not a Yom Tov. Why? I was by the Levaya. Don't tell me. I was there. The Rebbe said that by the Fabrein. But there's another language, another suffer. And the other suffer is that the life of a tzaddik does not end. And where is the tzaddik living? In us, in each person, each Lubavitcher Chassid. Any yid who does the Rebbe's Heirois, who learns the Rebbe's Torah, is a lavush, is a keli, is a sefer where the Rebbe's holiness is present. And that's what Chamisha B'Teves is. In other words, if you want to be honest about it, Chamisha B'Teves became a bigger Yom Tov after Gimel Tammuz. Chamisha B'Teves is the answer to Gimel Tammuz. I mean, you guys, like I said, your parents were little when Gimel Tammuz occurred. You don't remember Gimel Tammuz, you weren't born. It's such a long time. It's such an incredibly long time. What is the secret to Lubavitch? Why? Why are we still here? We're supposed to go away. Why is Lubavitch still here? You know why Lubavitch is here? Because the Rebbe is alive. It's very simple. The Rebbe is alive. Well, the Lubavitch, you're around. You're a Mishachist, right? You're a Mishachist. No. First of all, yeah, I'm a Halavai Mishachist. We should all be Mishachist. But we're Chassidim. The Rebbe is what the Rebbe said. The life of a Rebbe doesn't have a hefsek until Chassidim stop listening. If people stop learning the Rebbe's Torah, Chas v'Sholom, if people stop listening to the Rebbe's Rois, Chas v'Sholom, you can have this quote. You know, there's a quote from the Rebbe Marash. You know, there's a quote from the fourth Lubavitcher Rebbe. You know what? There's a quote from the Rebbe Marash, where the Rebbe Marash said, quote, he told it to Yankamata Paltiel. It's in look at the Buddha. Asedoch Chassidim is do a Rebbe. Aber Chassidim was tun. Oib de Chassidim tun nicht, machen sie dem Rebbe ois Rebbe. Heißt, Rabbi Yitzchak. Huh?
Is it the Melech Leon?
Yeah, the Rebbe Maharash said, if there's Chassidim, there's a Rebbe. But the Chassidim have to work. If the Chassidim stop working, they de-Rebbe the Rebbe. The Rebbe stops being a Rebbe. Now, the implication is very poshut. A Rebbe's Metzias is his guf. His guf is Chassidim. When we are the way we're supposed to be, the Rebbe is more living. If Chas v'Sholom we're not the way the Rebbe is supposed to be, that's where you have the Kitru. The story of, quote, Dira Notzach, as we like to say it, is a statement, it's an announcement of Hu B'Chaim, that the Rebbe is alive. Why is Hu B'Chaim? Because Zara B'Chaim, because we are the way we're supposed to be. Now, there's a lot of things about us that need to be better, no one's debating. But first of all, no one is stopping us from being better. You could actually sit down today. I came into Yeshiva this morning before 8 o'clock, and the Baruch was sitting Rachmana Litzlan and learning Gemara. Oh, you'll see it. Rachmana Litzlan, it wasn't Seder, and nobody was watching, and he was sitting and learning Gemara. And I don't know if he's having a test today. He's learning Gemara because you're supposed to learn Torah. You have a free, but you learn Torah. So I said to him, I noticed, and I ruined the whole morning for him. Everybody. No one is stopping us from growing as Chassidim. This is our obligation. But as a community, as a group, as a kehillah, the Rebbe is so alive. The Rebbe is so alive because we're so alive. This is, in other words, Chamisha B'Teves is the light that makes us live after Gimel Tammuz. It's really true. I know for the Mishachistim this is bad because there's Beli Hefsek, Beli Shini, Beli Hefsek. Everything they say has sources. Okay, if you want to fight with the Mishachistim, you may end up becoming one. So be careful, because everything they do, they'll show you where it's written. They'll show you where it's written in the Sikhat. You'll have to decide for yourself how you understand it. Okay. But the inyan of Hu B'Chaim is not even. It's not part of the debate. It's not part of the argument. The argument is whether we have an obligation to go tell the whole world that the Rebbe is Mashiach. But every Lubavitcher knows that the Rebbe is living. And you know where he lives? In your heart, in my heart. Every bocher that goes on Miftzayim. Every couple that goes on Shlichus. Every Lubavitcher who grows up and has an obligation to make the world a better place, whether he's a businessman or he's a professional or he's a shnorer or he's a shliach or he's a malamed, the Rebbe lives in you and by you and through you for the whole generation. This is this moyed. That's why this is such a big Yom Tov. And it's beklal an important day because it's kisla for us. It's not just the Alter Rebbe's Chassidim. And it's especially an important day when you understand this last point that I'm making about Hu B'chaim, because the Rebbe is alive in uns und mit uns und ba uns und durch uns to the whole world.